I never imagined that a single whispered sentence could erase 40 years of motherhood in one breath. That night, I wasn't eavesdropping. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't spying. I was simply walking past the study, my study, the one I paid for, furnished, and gifted to my son when he and his wife moved into the house I built from nothing. And that's when I heard my son say the words that froze my blood. Once the papers are done, we can move her into one of those cheap homes. She won't even realize what's happening. I stopped breathing. My hand tightened around the tray of tea I had brought for them. The cups rattled softly, but neither of them noticed. They were too busy planning my disappearance. His wife laughed quietly, a laugh I had heard 1,000 times at my dinner table. "We'll tell her it's temporary. You know, doctor's orders. She trusts you." Trusts you. That word cut deeper than any knife. I stood there in the hallway, invisible in my own home, listening as my only son discussed how to get rid of me like an old chair that no longer matched the decor. They talked about costs, they talked about distance, they talked about how these places don't allow many visitors, so it's actually easier. Easier. Not once did they say my name. I walked back to my room slowly, every step heavier than the last. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall where my son's childhood photos still hung. The boy I stayed up with during fevers, the boy I defended against the world, the boy whose education, dreams, and future I funded without ever asking for anything in return. And now I was an obstacle, a burden, a problem to be relocated cheaply. They didn't know one thing. I wasn't just his mother. I was also the majority shareholder of the company that paid for their lifestyle, their cars, their vacations, and the very house they were planning to remove me from. And that night, sitting alone in the silence, I made a decision. I would not scream. I would not confront them. I would not cry in front of anyone. Instead, I would let them finish their plan. And then I would use my majority stake to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I didn't want to waste a single moment. At breakfast, I smiled like I always did. I poured my son's coffee just the way he liked it. I asked his wife if she wanted toast or eggs. I listened as they talked about errands, meetings, and weekend plans. They acted normal. Too normal. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every "How are you feeling today, Mom?" sounded like a line from a script. And I realized something chilling. They had already emotionally moved me out of their lives. I was still physically present, but to them, I was already gone. Over the next few days, I watched carefully. I noticed how my daughter-in-law suddenly started bringing up senior living communities in casual conversation. "My friend's aunt just moved into one," she said sweetly. "They have bingo nights and nurses on call. It's actually kind of nice." My son nodded, pretending it was a random topic. "Yeah, Mom, just something to think about for the future." The future. They didn't know I had already seen their future, the one where I was locked away and forgotten. So I played my role. I acted confused. I asked innocent questions. I pretended I didn't understand paperwork when they left documents lying around the table. And while they underestimated me, I prepared. Quietly. I called my lawyer, someone I had worked with for over 20 years. A man who knew exactly how much of the company I still owned. "I want a full report," I told him calmly. "Every decision, every signature, every dependency they have on my stake." There was a pause on the line. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. I was more sure than I had ever been in my life. Next, I reviewed the files I hadn't looked at in years. I had trusted my son to handle the business side after his father passed. I let him believe he was in charge. But trust does not erase ownership, and ownership means power. I discovered that without my majority stake, the company couldn't approve loans, expand contracts, or even finalize their upcoming merger. The same merger they had been bragging about at dinner. The same merger that was supposed to secure their future. All while they planned to erase mine. At night, I lay in bed listening to their muffled laughter down the hall. I wondered when they stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as an inconvenience. But I didn't let bitterness break me. I let it sharpen me. Because if they thought I was weak, if they thought age had made me helpless, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The day they tried to move me came sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday morning when my son knocked on my door, his voice overly gentle, like you'd speak to a child or someone fragile. "Mom, we need to talk." I already knew what was coming. They sat me down at the dining table. My daughter-in-law placed a brochure in front of me, glossy pages filled with smiling elderly people, green lawns, and words like care, community, and peace of mind printed in bold letters. "This place is perfect," she said, "just until you get stronger." Stronger. I looked at the brochure, then at their faces. They were hopeful, nervous, excited, like people finalizing a deal. "We've already booked a room," my son added quickly. "Temporary, of course." I nodded slowly. "If you think it's best," I said quietly. Relief washed over them. They mistook my calm for surrender. That afternoon, they packed my things. Not everything, only what they thought I'd need. A few clothes, some books. They left behind photo albums, heirlooms, and anything that tied me to the home, because in their minds, I wasn't coming back. Before we left, I excused myself to the restroom and made one phone call. "Proceed," I told my lawyer, "effective immediately." When we arrived at the facility, something felt off. The front desk staff looked confused when my son gave my name. They whispered among themselves. Then a manager appeared. "I'm sorry," she said politely, "but we don't have any active reservation under this name." My daughter-in-law frowned. "That's impossible," she snapped. "We confirmed it." The manager checked again. "It appears the booking was canceled this morning." Canceled? I turned to my son. His face had gone pale. His phone buzzed, and then buzzed again, and again. Emails, calls, missed notifications. "Mom," he started, panic creeping into his voice. That's when I spoke, calm, clear, unshaken. "Before we go anywhere," I said, "perhaps you should check your company email." His hands trembled as he opened his phone. The color drained from his face. "The merger, it's on hold," he whispered. I met his eyes for the first time that day. "Yes," I said softly, "it is." Because that morning, while they were packing my bags, I had reclaimed full executive authority using my majority stake. And this was only the beginning. We didn't go home right away. My son insisted on stopping by the office. His voice was shaking now, stripped of confidence and control. My daughter-in-law sat in the back seat, silent, staring out the window like the world had betrayed her. When we walked into the boardroom, every executive was already seated, waiting. They stood when I entered. That was when my son finally understood. "Why are they standing?" he whispered. I took the seat at the head of the table, the one I hadn't occupied in years. "Because this," I said evenly, "is still my company." My lawyer placed documents in front of everyone. Ownership breakdown, voting power, emergency authority reinstatement. My son stared at the papers as if they were written in another language. "You said you were retiring," he protested. I nodded. "I said I was stepping back. I never said I was stepping away." My daughter-in-law finally spoke, her tone sharp and defensive. "This has nothing to do with business. We were just trying to help you." I turned to her slowly. "By planning to hide me in a cheap home?" I asked quietly. "By discussing how few visitors I'd get?" The room fell silent. My son's shoulders sagged. "You heard that?" he asked. "Every word," I replied. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You thought age made me powerless. You thought trust made me blind." Then I delivered the truth. "Effective today, your executive role is suspended pending review. The merger is canceled, and no major decision will move forward without my direct approval." My son looked devastated. My daughter-in-law looked furious. "You're ruining our lives," she snapped. I leaned forward. "No," I said firmly, "I'm saving mine." For the first time, they saw me not as a burden, but as a force. And they finally understood something else. You don't discard the person who built everything and expect the foundation to stay standing. I didn't kick my son out of the company forever. That would have been easy. What I did instead was harder and far more meaningful. I moved out of the house by choice, not to a cheap facility, not in secret, but into a small, beautiful apartment overlooking a park, paid for with money I earned. The house? I sold it. Every room that once echoed with my sacrifices was turned into numbers on a contract my son never saw coming. When he realized the house was gone, he broke down. "That was our home," he said. I looked at him with calm clarity. "No," I replied, "it was mine. I just let you live there." Over the following months, my son worked under supervision. He had to earn trust again, not through blood, but through actions. His wife stopped speaking to me entirely, and that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't block them from my life. I didn't seek revenge. I chose boundaries. I chose dignity, and I chose to teach them a lesson no inheritance ever could. You do not throw away the people who built your life, because one day you may realize they were the only reason it stood at all. Now, every morning I walk in the park. I drink my coffee in peace. I answer to no one but myself. And sometimes when my son calls, his voice softer, humbler, I answer. Because strength isn't cruelty. It's knowing when to stand up and when to walk away with your head held high.